From the Major Label Debut Podcast Network, this is your MLD News. I'm Graham Wright, and joining me, as always, to break down the latest happenings in and around the world of music and things we saw on our computers, it's Major Label Debut producer John Paul Bullock. John Paul, how the hell are you, buddy?
Doing fine and dandy, like sour candy, Graham. Ned Flanders
I'm so glad
style.
to hear it. Oakley dokley, pal.
I'm Flandersing it up. I was delighted this morning when we started to prepare for this podcast to see that our good friend Morrissey, famously a man who insisted that Penguin Classics put out his autobiography along the lines of like Geoffrey Chaucer and, who else? I don't know. Chekhov came at our boy Johnny Marr in the press about some Smiths documentary that's about to come out. And so I was just so excited coming into this being like, A, I want to hear about your relationship with the Smiths, and B, I want to hear about your relationship with guitar goals. What worlds are left for you as a 20-year professional musician to conquer? What do you want? What are you lusting after gear-wise these days?
So I think about this a lot, and the reason we're talking about this is because the topic of our show today is another one of our patented auction perusals. This time, the Marr's Guitars auction. Johnny Marr of the Smiths and many other bands is auctioning off via Christie's a number of his famously beautiful guitar collection as outlined in the book Marr's Guitars, as used on record not just by Johnny Marr, but by Noel Gallagher of Oasis, by Ed O'Brien of Radiohead, probably by a lot of others, because one thing about Johnny Marr is he seems really forthcoming with his guitars. If you meet him and you talk about that you're recording, he'll show up at the studio with guitars and just leave them there for you to use. And they're all beautiful, and they'll be the guitars you use on your record. Which parenthetically, I have also noticed friend of the pod, Rob Schnaff, is another man with a truly staggering collection of beautiful guitars and is also really thrilled just to have people use them and is not precious about them and is not stingy or museum-like in his ownership of his so-called guitarsenal. They're tools to be played, and he wants to see them played. And I think Johnny Marr seems to have the same quality, although now he's selling a bunch of them. My guitar goals at this point, as someone who owns I think I have more nice guitars than anyone else in Tokyo Police Club, despite being charitably the third best guitar player in that band from a skill level. But I love a nice instrument, and I always felt like as a professional, I could justify spending a bit of dough on them. I don't want any guitars right now. My lust has moved back towards the world of like Moogs and or Tritonium simulating modern synths. There's such a cornucopia of beautiful new electronic instruments being released seemingly every week. That little, what's the little orchid, that the Tame Impala guy had a hand in inventing? That I want one of those real bad. I just bought a good old-fashioned acoustic piano, which really satisfied a lust I didn't even really know I have. And so my guitars have kind of been collecting dust while I've been tinkling the old ivories again. However, I will say that when I saw the beautiful classic black Rickenbacker on Johnny Marr's guitar auction, I've never owned a Rickenbacker. I've never played a Rickenbacker on record or live. I don't know that I've ever really played a Rickenbacker guitar through an amp with any amount of concentration. Josh used to have one. Major Label Debut producer and Tokyo Police Club guitar player Josh Hook had a beautiful Rickenbacker that I tried to buy from him 3 years after he'd already sold it.
My brother-in-law Phil just got one. Shout out to Phil. I think his is blue, or like a icy kind of purple blue. Very, very pretty instrument, California made, I believe. I find that very interesting. I think your guitars will come crashing back into your life very soon, and I want you to have that Rick. There's never been one guitar that you've always been like, one day I'm going to buy that.
No, I only had that once, and it was for the Fender Telecaster Deluxe. And with the usual sort of falling ass backwards into goal fulfillment that I demonstrated through the first 20 years of my adulthood, shortly after deciding that that was my goal guitar, I stumbled upon a ludicrously well-priced one on Kijiji, which is sort of a Canadian Craigslist equivalent, which I guess is funny.
It is very funny.
Kijiji. Kijiji. I drove out to Oshawa, Ontario, and bought this beautiful used Fender Telecaster Deluxe from a construction worker who didn't care about it. And I put new frets on it, and I played it on all the last Tokyo tours. That was my guitar. So I got it, and I have it. And frankly, I played it so much that I haven't even played it in probably a year. So that's where I'm at with my guitars, is they're collecting dust, which is not what you want. And it's probably why Johnny Marr is selling his now.
Well, I'll tell you, Johnny Marr, I'm curious to hear about Johnny Marr's impact on your life, because I know the biggest maybe impact he's had is the fact that he introduced the world to Oasis. Like, he's the reason why Oasis, well, one of the reasons why they had a meteoric rise to fame was that he identified their awesomeness pretty early on and was a champion of their work. And like you said, lent them a bunch of legit instruments to make their art with. And, legendarily a good hang. The guy's been in at least half a dozen iconic bands and then performed with scores of other iconic musicians as a sideman. And, just aside from the Smiths, he's Pretenders, the Electronic, Modest Mouse. I think he was in the Cribs, like technically for one or two of those records. And that's on top of being a prolific solo artist and a guy who also has I think one of the greatest. It is a guitar goal for me. His signature Jaguar is a guitar that, next time I fall into some money, I would like consider purchasing one if it's available to me. If they have an Olympic white one that is in good shape somewhere, I would get it.
Sure, that would be beautiful to have. Why not just spend an estimated £8,000 to £12,000 to purchase Johnny Marr's literal own personal signature Jaguar from the auction?
I think he's got. I think he had dozens of them that he went through as prototypes. But yeah, I don't know. I'd rather have my own. He can have this. Okay, so tell me about your relationship with the Smiths and Johnny Marr, and then let's get to picking axes here.
When I looked up Johnny Marr on Wikipedia in advance of this, just to bone up, I was sort of shocked to discover he's 62, so he's only like 23 or 4 years older than me, which I realized that the Smiths, when I was a kid, they felt antiquated. They were from the 80s. But in retrospect, they were right behind where I was at. And I think a lot of bands of that era I missed out on the first time around because they weren't old enough to be reclaimed and they weren't new enough to be on the radio or on much music. And so I just didn't come across them, other than one of my favorite ever examples of knowing a song really well and discovering it was by a band I knew about much, much later is How Soon Is Now.
There you go.
Which after I got into the Smiths as like a high school girlfriend mix CD band, kind of perfect for that. Then I found out they also wrote How Soon Is Now. But as I'm saying this, I'm realizing my real relationship with the Smiths began when I purchased The Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Oh, yeah.
At the Newmarket bookstore as probably a grade 9 or 10 student, and devoured it. And that book talks a lot about the Smiths, who I had never really listened to. And so I think it's a really interesting way to receive a band where someone is doing, and I think that book does a really nice job of describing the feeling of not just listening to, but immersing yourself in the music of the Smiths and what it can feel like and what it can mean to someone. And to start with that reaction and then fill in the music later was really interesting. And I never was an albums guy. I couldn't, I don't know a lot of deep cuts even to this day, but the hits and the jams, which are myriad, they're great. They're undeniable. They're so unique. Even still, I don't think anyone's really done a terribly successful job of imitating their brilliance, including both Morrissey and Marr moving forward. And that's pretty amazing for a band like that to be so one of a kind, even after all these years and even after being so prominent. Many have often imitated, never duplicated, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What about yours?
I came about them, a few years before. They were more, actually, my introduction to the Smiths was through Morrissey's solo single, The More You Ignore Me. The closer I get. And it was that led me tumbling back into his work and then settling on, deep Johnny Marr fandom when I realized how sort of integrated into all the other music I liked from that period he was, and from, moving forward. That it's funny we're talking about the Jaguar because there's that pedal show. I'll link it in the description. There's a great That Pedal Show interview with him where he talks about how he got the first Jaguar he'd ever had, and basically like Isaac Brock just cold called him, was like, hey, you should come join Modest Mouse, and he's like, but I don't know who you are, and he's like, just come to Portland and we'll hang out and jam. And so he goes there for a week, and the first night they're like drinking in his attic recording stuff, and there's the Jaguar that becomes the prototype, the thing that he said that literally picked it up and played that riff for Dashboard Melted and that song Dashboard from that record, the first one that they made together. And he was like, turned to Isaac Brock and was like, can I buy this guitar from you? And Isaac Brock, who apparently was quite drunk at the time, was like, sure. And then like later on, Isaac Brock, I think, has been like, I think he took advantage of me, like took this. But I also like him as like Johnny Marr as a guy who's like just in guitar stores all the time looking at stuff, and like a gear guy, like a gear boy. And I think of shout out Gear Boys. I think of Johnny Marr is one of the original Gear Boys, and an icon in so many ways, but also like a guy who just had flawless taste in guitars. Like every single one of these guitars I would be happy to own. The ones that are up on the Christie's website, we should say the auction is September 17th. Everything right now is priced ludicrously low. It's all going to go for way more than what they've got it here. But I thought we could, you and I, pick some guitars that we would like from the 12 that are up there. I am curious to see if you are going to pick the same guitars I have. I have settled on 3 that are my favorites, and I will tell you why. Okay. But first, I'd like to hear, what is the third, but what is the one of the 3 that you'd least like to have? But I guess, I don't know, third, like not, in descending order.
Of the 3, I guess I would have to say I'll pick one of the acoustics, because I find the acoustics on these are often, it's just a Gibson from the 60s. These are, well, they're not a dime a dozen. They're pretty, if you want a Gibson from the 60s and you have $7,500, you can acquire one. Or in this case, 20 to 30,000 pounds for a hollow body acoustic electric guitar, a J160E. It's one of the ones with the knobs on it. I've never had a Gibson acoustic guitar. Although every time I've played a Gibson acoustic guitar, I have said to myself, this is the nicest acoustic guitar I've ever played. And so I think that what finer one to start my collection with than Johnny Marr's own. And that would be my bottom of the top 3.
Well, that's also
to fill out that role.
In line with your taste, because isn't that the John Lennon guitar as well? It's the Beatles.
Yeah, I believe it is.
Acoustic, yeah. All right. Well, my number 3 pick is the 1977 Gretsch Super Axe that has that weird black pickguard thing that has all the electronics embedded in it, like your Gibson that is now the new guitar. What your Gibson's what is also a late 70s.
Yeah, exactly. I think that they must have just figured out some guitar manufacturing technology where they could, if they put all the electronic stuff in one little pickguard thing, they could plop it all into the guitars in a more assembly line manner. I'm sure there's a name for that, but I'm not that much of a gearhead.
Well, I think that's the first Smiths guitar. I think that's the hand and glove guitar. I think it's also, I think he had a Les Paul or maybe a Les Paul knockoff that he had sold to get that Gretsch. And it's also like a super weird Gretsch for the time. Like, I don't think I've ever seen one of those in person, but I associate it with the Smiths, and it's in the Marr's guitar book, which is definitely a great coffee table guitar porn kind of book. It's the first thing that's covered really well in it, and I love the block inlays. I love the color, the kind of like automotive red. That's in it. It's cherry red, I guess. That's my number 3 pick.
It's a beautiful guitar and a very distinctive guitar, especially for a Gretsch, which there's another Gretsch in this auction, which you may name, I won't be naming, that is a little more what you'd expect when you think of a Gretsch, but I love their sort of weirder ones. My number 2 is the aforementioned semi-hollow body Rickenbacker 330 in classic black. It's 1982. Not that I know what that means for Rickenbackers, and it's just... That's the thing about a Rickenbacker guitar is they're so iconic. They're so classic in like the sort of 2 or 3 formats that they come in. And I just would want one. I'd just like to have that one. I think it would be nice to learn how to make a Rickenbacker sing, which, as I understand, is kind of a different skill set. You got to change all your settings if you're going from a Tele or a Les Paul to a Rickenbacker. It wants a different amp.
Well, it's funny because I also associate that with Tom Petty, and I associate more specifically Mike Campbell, right? And then also I associate it with LA in the early 80s, like Paisley Underground bands like the Bangles and the Go-Go's and all that 60s facing stuff, which I do think of as, also that the Smiths were kind of part of the global movement towards those retro acts.
Yeah, they do have a real jangle to their sound. It's just cut with this sort of inimitably British melancholy that makes for a heady brew.
And like REM, we're not blues rock songs. I mean, all the songs are. It's one of the things I think it's so cool about Johnny Marr is he's a riff guy, but he's like a weird riff guy. It's not they're not really recognizable as blues rock from the 60s. It's just using the sonic palette of that stuff, but with different structures and different ideas.
Yeah, they don't have exactly the same melodic style, but I'm reminded a bit of our close personal friend and one of my true guitar heroes, Mr. Josh Hook, also producer of Major Label Debut, in terms of just the full spectrum use of the instrument, the notes on the instrument, the playing technique with the sonic sculpting offered by effects and then an amp at the end of it, and using that entire palette to paint really unique, hooky, memorable, sonic masterpieces.
Yeah, absolutely.
We love you, Josh.
Love you, Josh. My number 2 is the 1952 ES 295, the Scotty Moore guitar. Even though I think that Scotty Moore actually didn't play them I think he played them a little bit at the beginning, and then I think he moved on really quickly to other stuff, but I associate it with, it's the Scotty Moore guitar. I love the flowers on the pick guard. They just put out a gold top Mary Ford guitar that has a similar screen printing on the pick guard, and it also has screen printing on the armrest little thing on the side of it.
Wow.
Which is another great guitar. But there's something about the way those guitars age, even though this one I think has a big headstock break. I'm sure all the Gibsons from this period that are also like, what's the thing they say where it's like if you fix it right, it plays better than it did when it originally.
Yeah, my TV Yellow, it's either a Les Paul Jr. or something else. I've heard conflicting reports from guitar techs, but the single pickup TV Yellow Gibson that I played on the actual Final Tokyo tour, I bought and on a whim, and then sort of never developed a good relationship with, and the headstock broke. And I got it fixed, and I still never quite got in the groove with it. And then the headstock broke a second time. And after the second time I got it fixed, it just became the only guitar I ever wanted to play. Like as if by magic. And I don't know if it's psychological or what, but yeah, sometimes you got to do it twice.
Absolutely. I hope it doesn't happen again, though.
No, because next time it might not be good. It's like in a cartoon when someone bonks their head and becomes a math genius until the next time they bonk their head, it all goes away.
You can speak French now.
Yeah, like in Rookie of the Year, when the second time he falls, he can't throw fastballs anymore. You have named my number one as your number two. That's,
oh, wow.
It just exudes the aura of a guitar that the instant you pick it up, magical things will start to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just invoked the notion of magic twice, talking about two different guitars, which demonstrates the sort of superstitious way that I think a lot of musicians relate to guitars in particular. No particular keyboard has ever felt to me like it's got anything inside it that is like unique. But guitars very much feel like guitar to guitar, two identical guitars with serial numbers that are sequential. One can give you brilliance and one can just be a piece of wood. And this is a guitar that, for a lot of reasons, looks to me like something that it wants me to play it.
Mm-hmm.
Can I borrow 20 to 30,000 Great Britain pounds?
Absolutely, yes.
Estimated cost.
Absolutely, yes, you can.
Great. Well, that solves that problem.
Okay. Well, wait. So who's going to go first with their number one? Now
that is my number one.
Well, okay, but then you have.
That was it.
That was it. Sorry. Well, so my number one is
go.
The 1963 Epiphone Casino, the How Soon Is Now guitar. It is a. I love a casino with a factory Bigsby. All the time I look at casinos and I'm like, could I put a Bigsby on here? And apparently one of the problems is the wood is often so thin that if you put it on there, it like stress fractures over time. But the ones that came factory installed, I'm not sure if they put them on ones with thicker tops or not, but there's something just more legitimate to me about that. Also that I think that kind of Bigsby you would have to drill into the wood to install it, because there's the other, I don't know, it's like the B3 and the B5 or whatever, that one of them you can just put on the exterior of the guitar, but one of them you have to drill into it. And I know I've told you this, but I went to a famous Los Angeles guitar shop and I played one of these that was like a cheaper version of it, a more recent, I think, Indonesian version of it. And it was like the best playing casino I'd ever played. And I played it for like an hour and was ready to buy it. And then I looked inside and saw that the serial number had been gouged out and that was clearly, at some point in time, was clearly stolen. Probably not from the person who sold it to the famous guitar store, but I just thought, oh, this is a haunted instrument. This instrument will bring doom to me.
Just as much as it can bring magic, it can bring a curse into your life. You're absolutely right.
But
this one, on the other hand, if Christie's is selling it, it presumably is of demonstrable provenance.
Yeah, I mean, it is just like a gorgeous thing. All these, they're actual works of art, and I'm so glad that this man curated for them, and I'm so glad that they like exist in this book, because you can have them all for whatever it is, $50 or something.
That's right.
It's worth it. But also, I hope that Johnny Marr is happy getting rid of these things. You know, he legendarily has like a bunch of other things, like bursts and all kinds of other stuff that I'm sure. And it's interesting to me that he's selling these, because these are iconic Smiths guitars and other guitars he played in like the Pretenders and stuff. And so it's I don't know. I heard him say recently, he's basically like, I only play Jaguars now. And that's just I think that might be part of why he's getting rid of these, is that he's like, I just don't ever play them.
It also, I remember when the late great Steve Albini auctioned off some of his studio stuff, including a lot of the In Utero gear. he sort of said this vocal mic that I used for Kurt Cobain has become so valuable that I find myself hesitating to use it as a tool in the studio, which is the opposite of everything I'm trying to do here. So I'm just going to get it out the door so I can go back to working and not revering.
Totally.
And I wonder if it must be a real burden too, as much as I'm sure it's wonderful to have, to be Johnny Marr and be involved in those beautiful songs and be part of that legacy, complicated as it sometimes gets, thanks to his partner in crime. It's also the How Soon Is Now guitar is the How Soon Is Now guitar. And to sit down and just write and jam on that is, maybe a little less fruitful than to sit down and write and jam on one of his many Jaguars.
I think it was also like I saw, I think it was Steve Lukather or one of the other, that guy Pierce, who's I forget his first name, who's a guitar YouTuber, who was talking about how he had the mandolin from the Johnny Resnick band. What's it called?
The Goo Goo Dolls?
Goo Goo Dolls
What's
mandolin.
It called? The Iris mandolin.
Iris mandolin. And that he sold it to like a super fan, and that how happy the person was who bought it was just like, this is the object I've always wanted in my life the entire time. So I assume there's part of that too, is that there's like, I'm sure some of these guitars will go to like evil villains, but there's definitely going to be a handful of people who are obsessed with the Smiths and get a piece of ephemera, or, that makes them feel even more connected to something they love. And I'm taking the optimistic look. What I want is also for him to make even more money and to continue being awesome, Johnny Marr, and to continue to have the resources to fight his decades-long battle with his former bandmate. And yeah.
Although I am Team Marr, as a fan of Rock and Roll Feuds, it would be funny if the person that bought all these guitars at auctions was Stephen Morrissey and he ran them all over with a steamroller on Instagram Live. You can't deny that'd be good entertainment. He would
he was promised that he would do it on Instagram Live, and then he wouldn't show up.
Right, that's right.
Cancel the last minute.
I may have shared this on the show in an interview or something before, but I felt this would be a good opportunity to share my Johnny Marr story, which is one of my favorite anecdotes, and I've dined out on for years and will now exploit one more time, which is that in 2007 or 8, when Tokyo Police Club did our first ever tour bus tour, it was a tour of the UK and Europe because it was in the summer and we were playing all of the festivals, the full circuit. This is when we did Glastonbury. I think we did Reading and Leeds this summer, Latitude, Oxygen, others you've never even heard of. We were in Sweden. We were all over the place. And it's the same lineup basically on all these festivals. And Modest Mouse with Johnny Marr in the band on that first tour was sort of headlining most of these shows. And we were on the tour bus solely because it was the only way that we could get from place to place in time to play the afternoon sets that we were playing at these festivals. We did not have the money really to afford a tour bus, which meant we did not have the money to ever get a hotel room to have a shower in. We basically would wake up. You wake up every day to the sound of a kick drum getting sound checked on the stage that you are parked behind. And then you straggle out into a field that has been hastily converted into a festival site. And you're basically like a Civil War soldier just roaming over the land, foraging for food where you can get it. And, you'd have a shower. I was having showers in like weird janitor's closets and stuff with a hose. And they would always have catering at these festivals, and you could get breakfast, you can get lunch, you can get dinner, but you have a ticket for each meal. And your ticket, they let you in and you go through the buffet line and get your food. But once you've left the tent without the ticket, you don't get to come back in. But we're not getting a rider. The bus is barely stocked. We're all 20 famished like urchins, just canvassing Europe. And so at the end of every night, we would go back to the catering tent after everything was shutting down, basically to supplicate ourselves to the staff in hopes of getting whatever leftover food they have so we'd have something more to eat. And over and over again, we would go to the catering tent, and sitting in the catering tent alone, eating a big sandwich that was the last sandwich they had left, was Johnny Marr. and we never spoke to him, but we always made eye contact with him. And although he's had a very busy and full life, I have to think that he must remember a little bit that there was 4 weird kids who were always looking at him, salivating, like sad Dickensian orphans, while he enjoyed the sandwich that was rightfully to be split 4 ways for Tokyo Police Club. So I salute Johnny Marr for that role in my life as well, which I would not have any other way.
He's a great connoisseur of sandwiches as well as guitars.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, the Johnny Marr auction takes place on September 17th. For our wealthy C-suite listeners, you're going to want to be there early to snap up those guitars to send to us as presents. And maybe we'll revisit this news story when the time comes.
I look forward to that. Thank you so much for listening to this. Please like and subscribe to all our stuff. Share this with your friends so they could hear Graham's Johnny Marr sandwich story. Thank you so much, Josh Hook, who is our Polaris, the North Star of this podcast. Hi, Josh.
Thank you. You're the greatest.
Greg Alsop for making the greatest theme song in the world.
Also, parenthetically, if you are a Greg Alsop fan and a Disney Plus subscriber, search the Night at the Museum cartoon series because the main character of that show looks like someone drew Greg Alsop. It is uncanny and incredibly amusing. So shout out to Greg, star of that cartoon.
Thank you, Graham, for having me on your podcast, as you're the beautiful shining star of, a lot like the twin stars with you and Josh. I think there's a binary system, a force dyad, if you will. We've been rewatching all the more recent Star Wars movies. We can have a separate podcast about that.
I look forward to it
soon. I love you all. Thank you for listening. Major Label Debut will be back with what, Graham?
More tales and news from the intersection of art and commerce.
See you soon.
See you soon.
Bye.